Fluorescent lights flickered in the near-empty parking lot. A single mom locked up, clutching her purse as shadows crept closer. She thought she was alone, until the growl of engines rose behind her. And 60 Harleys rolled in, chrome blazing beneath the moonlight. Before we start this story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Also, please subscribe to the channel. It will help us to bring you more inspiring stories every day. The town of Redwood Haven lived quiet by day, but uneasy by night. On its outskirts, the harbor mart stayed open late, a lifeline for tired workers and lonely truckers. Dana Whitaker, 32, worked the closing shift most nights. A single mom raising her 7-year-old daughter, Grace, Dana had learned to wear courage on her face, even when her chest ached with fear. Bills stacked on the counter at home, her daughter's drawings taped beside them like reminders of why she fought so hard. That Friday, she clicked the register shut, lights humming above as the last customer shuffled out. Alone now, she swept the aisles, locked the glass doors, and stepped into the cool dark. Her breath clouded the air as she walked toward her old sedan, parked beneath a flickering lamp. That's when she noticed them. 2 men leaning on her car, their grins sharp, eyes mean. "Closing time, sweetheart," one sneered. Dana's stomach dropped. Her keys trembled in her hand. Dana's heart pounded as the men closed in, circling her car. "No rush," the taller one said, blocking her path. "We'll keep you company." She tried to steady her voice. "Please move. I need to get home to my daughter." The words only fed their smirks. One leaned close, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Maybe we'll give you a ride instead." Dana's hands clenched the keys like a blade, but fear froze her feet. The parking lot was silent except for their laughter, until it wasn't. A distant rumble rolled through the night, faint at first, then swelling like thunder. The men turned, their grins faltering as 60 headlights cut across the lot. Harleys poured in, chrome flashing beneath street lamps, leather vests glowing red and white. Engines roared as 60 angels formed a wall behind Dana, their presence heavier than any weapon. The laughter died. The air shifted. And for the first time that night, Dana's fear was no longer hers alone. The bikers shut their engines in unison, silence dropping like a stone. The leader dismounted, boots echoing on the pavement. Kane Ironjaw Maddox, his beard streaked with gray, eyes sharp as flint, stepped forward. He didn't glance at Dana. He locked his gaze on the 2 men. "Is there a problem here?" His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a storm. The men stammered, suddenly small under the stare of 60 angels. "We were just talking," one muttered. Ironjaw's jaw flexed. "Didn't sound like talking." He stepped closer, his presence pressing the air thin. Behind him, the other bikers stood still, silent statues in leather and steel. Dana's chest tightened as one of the men tried to speak again, only to falter beneath the heavy silence. Ironjaw finally turned, meeting Dana's frightened eyes. His voice softened, surprisingly gentle. "You ready to go home, ma'am?" She nodded, relief flooding her. "Then we'll see you there." Dana slid into her car, hands still trembling on the wheel. Ironjaw raised a hand, and the angels shifted, forming a moving barricade around her vehicle. Engines roared back to life, vibrating the pavement. Slowly the convoy rolled forward, Dana's sedan tucked safely inside. In the rear view, she saw the 2 men retreating into shadows, their bravado shattered. The ride through Redwood Haven was surreal. Porch lights flicked on as the thunder of 60 Harleys echoed down the streets. People peered from curtains, eyes wide at the sight. A single mother's car shielded in chrome and leather. Grace's face flashed in Dana's mind, the promise she'd made to always come home. Tears blurred her vision as she gripped the wheel tighter. She had been invisible for so long, another tired cashier closing up, fighting alone. But tonight the whole town saw her. Tonight she wasn't prey, she was protected, carried by a wall of steel and loyalty she never expected. The convoy stopped outside Dana's small duplex, the engines cutting to silence one by one. Grace peeked from the window, eyes wide, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Dana stepped out of the car, overwhelmed. Ironjaw walked up, his size intimidating but his voice steady. "Heard enough to know they won't bother you again?" "But if they do," he gestured to the line of bikes, their chrome glinting under the street lamp. "Who you call we ride?" Dana's throat tightened. She wanted to thank them, but words stuck. Instead she nodded, tears slipping free. Ironjaw tipped his head respectfully, then turned. One by one, the angels mounted their bikes, engines roaring back like thunder rolling out to sea. Grace ran to the door as Dana entered, hugging her tight. "Mom, who were they?" Dana kissed her daughter's hair, whispering, "Angels, sweetheart. Real ones." And as the thunder faded, Dana knew her world had changed. Not just because of what they'd stopped, but because of what they'd started. The next morning, Redwood Haven buzzed with rumors. At the cafe, voices carried, 60 angels in town last night." Another whispered, "They escorted the cashier home." Dana kept her head low as she poured Grace's cereal. But when she walked Grace to school, eyes followed. A teacher pulled her aside, worry etched deep. "Dana, people are saying you've gotten mixed up with them." Dana bit her lip. "They saved me. I didn't ask for it, but I won't apologize." Still, whispers trailed her down Main Street. That evening she sat on her porch, the air thick with unease. Then came the sound again, engines rumbling. 3 Harleys pulled up, Ironjaw and 2 brothers dismounting. Dana stiffened, but his voice was calm. "Town's restless. We don't blame you, but it's safer if you don't walk alone." Grace peeked out, her eyes lighting up. Ironjaw gave her the smallest smile, then tipped his head. "You got people now, Dana, whether the town likes it or not." That night sleep came hard. Dana replayed the moment in the lot, the way fear had clawed her chest. And then she remembered the silence when the angels shut their engines, how it had felt like a wall closing around her, not to trap, but to shield. She rose before dawn, staring out the window. A single Harley idled at the curb, its rider keeping watch. At first she bristled. Then she exhaled, realizing she felt safer than she had in years. Later at work, a customer sneered, "Bet you feel important now, riding with outlaws." Dana forced a smile, but anger burned. When her shift ended, she stepped into the lot, heart pounding, only to see 2 angels already leaning against her car, waiting. They didn't speak, just nodded as she approached. Dana's fear cracked into gratitude. She whispered, "Thank you." One rider simply replied, "Family looks after its own," and for the first time, she wondered if she finally belonged somewhere. But the tension in Redwood Haven only grew. At the diner, people shifted away when Dana entered. The pastor's wife muttered loud enough for her to hear, "Brought wolves to our door." That night, Grace asked quietly, "Mum, are we in trouble because of them?" Dana held her close. "No, honey. We're safer now than ever." Yet doubts gnawed at her. As if hearing her thoughts, engines rolled in again. This time, a half-dozen Harleys parked neatly across her street, their riders posted like statues under the lamplight. Neighbors peeked from curtains, fear painting every face. Ironjaw approached the porch, his voice steady. "Calm down, the town'll take time. But you don't owe them shame. You were cornered. We don't forget that." Dana searched his eyes, surprised at the quiet humanity beneath the leather. He tipped his head, then returned to his bike. That night, with the thunder outside, Dana finally slept without fear. For once, the dark no longer belonged to shadows. The backlash came on a Wednesday. Dana arrived at work to find slut angels spray-painted across the store's side wall. Her chest tightened as co-workers stared, whispering. The manager muttered, "This is bad for business. Maybe you should take some time off." Dana swallowed her anger. On her break, she slipped outside, hands shaking as she tried scrubbing the paint with a rag. A shadow fell over her. Ironjaw stood there, rag in hand. Behind him, 5 bikers carried buckets and brushes. "This ain't your mess to clean," he said. Together, they scrubbed the wall, paint dripping down into sudsy puddles. Townsfolk gathered, some frowning, others stunned into silence. Within an hour, the wall gleamed white again. Dana's arms trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes glistened. "Why are you doing this for me?" she asked. Ironjaw met her gaze. "Because you stood alone that night. And once we see that in someone, we never let them stand alone again." Word spread faster than the paint had dried. By evening, Redwood Haven was split. Some spat at the angel's presence. Others whispered admiration. Dana sat on her porch, Grace asleep inside, when Renee, an older biker's wife, approached with a warm pie. "Town may not thank you," she said, "but women like us see you. You didn't deserve that lot, and you sure don't deserve their scorn." Dana's throat tightened. She realized it wasn't just the angels standing behind her. It was their families, their wives, their daughters. As night deepened, the rumble of bikes filled the street again. 60 angels lined the block, silent but unshakable. Neighbors peeked from windows, but no one dared step out. Ironjaw approached the porch. "They tried to shame you." We answered. "Now they know your fight is our fight." Dana's eyes welled. She whispered, "I didn't ask for this." Ironjaw's voice was steady. "Doesn't matter. Sometimes family finds you when you least expect it." The following Friday, Dana finished her shift with unease, sitting heavy in her chest. She lingered by the register, hoping the parking lot would be empty. But when she finally stepped out, her worst fear stood waiting. The same two men leaned against her car, grins sharper than before. One tossed a bottle cap in the air. "Guess your biker babysitters got tired," he sneered. Dana froze, keys clenched in her fist. Her voice wavered, but she stood taller. "Leave me alone." They circled closer, their shadows stretching long in the lamplight. For a terrifying second, there was no sound but their laughter, until headlights blazed. Harleys poured into the lot, 60 strong. Engines roaring like a storm breaking the night. The men stumbled back as Ironjaw dismounted, his voice low, deadly calm. "You didn't listen the first time. That was your mistake." Dana's heart pounded, but this time she didn't feel alone. She felt surrounded by thunder. The men tried to bluster, their words drowned by the rising engines. Ironjaw stepped closer, his frame casting them in shadow. "You think fear makes you strong? Let me show you what strength looks like." He raised a hand. The angels cut their engines at once. Silence slammed down heavier than noise. Every eye in that lot, every patch, every boot, turned toward the men. One swallowed hard. The other muttered, "This ain't over." Ironjaw's lip curled. "It was over the second you touched her car." With a flick of his hand, the angels parted, leaving a path out. The men bolted into the night, swallowed by their own cowardice. Dana exhaled a trembling breath, tears sliding down her cheeks. Ironjaw turned to her, voice softening. "You don't owe them fear anymore." She nodded, whispering, "Thank you." But what struck her deepest wasn't the threat's end. It was the sight of 60 men who had chosen her fight as their own. The town couldn't ignore it anymore. By morning, everyone knew what had happened at the Harbor Mart. Some cursed Dana's name, calling her a magnet for trouble. Others whispered with awe, 60 angels for her. At school drop-off, Grace clung tighter to Dana's hand. A mother muttered, "Think of the example you're setting." Dana almost broke, shame biting hard. But that evening, Ironjaw returned, leaning on his bike. "The noise will fade," he said, reading her silence. "But your little girl? She'll remember the night her mom stood tall. And that'll last." Grace peeked from the porch, smiling shyly at the bikes. For the first time, Dana didn't hush her. She let her daughter wave. The angels waved back, rough hands gentle in their gestures. And in Grace's laughter, Dana heard something she hadn't in months: lightness. That night she realized that while the town debated her worth, her daughter was learning the truth. Strength isn't about silence. It's about standing, but trouble has a way of circling back. A week later, Dana locked up the store to find her car's tires slashed, glass shattered across the seat. Her chest tightened as she dialed the sheriff. But before she could speak, engines echoed. Within minutes, A dozen angels filled the lot, headlights washing the wreck. Ironjaw knelt, touching the torn rubber. "So they're trying to break you." Dana's throat burned. "It's working." His gaze lifted, sharp but kind. "Then lean on us. That's what we're here for." By dawn, her driveway was full of bikers. They replaced every tire, fixed the window, tuned the engine until it purred. Grace brought out juice boxes, giggling as these giants bent down to take them. Dana watched, stunned. They weren't just protecting her. They were rebuilding her life piece by piece. When Ironjaw handed her the keys, his voice was steady. "Wheels ready." "And so are we." Dana finally believed him. She wasn't standing alone anymore. The tension reached its peak at Redwood Haven's town fair. Dana hesitated to go, but Grace begged for cotton candy. They walked hand in hand, whispers chasing them through the crowd. Suddenly the two men appeared again, emboldened by the public setting. One grabbed Dana's arm, snarling, "Your babysitters ain't here now." Panic seized her chest. Then came the ground-shaking roar. Harleys streamed into the fairgrounds, 60 strong, chrome blazing in the sun. The crowd froze as the angels circled, surrounding Dana and Grace. The men paled, their courage draining. Ironjaw dismounted, voice low but carrying. "Last warning. You lay a hand on her and you answer to all of us." The fair was silent, every eye watching. Grace clung to Dana, whispering, "Mom, they came." Dana's tears spilled as the men backed off, swallowed by the crowd. The angels didn't move toward them. They stayed around her, a human shield. And for the first time, the whole town saw her safety made flesh. The fair buzzed with silence long after the men fled. Parents clutched children. Vendors froze behind counters. 60 angels stood like sentinels, their presence undeniable. For years, Redwood Haven had whispered fear at the sound of Harleys. But today, no one could deny what they'd seen, not predators but protectors. Dana stood taller, Grace clinging to her hand. Ironjaw gave a single nod before signaling his men. Engines roared, vibrating the ground. The bikers rode out slowly, leaving behind stunned faces and a silence heavier than their thunder. A boy tugged his mother's sleeve, whispering, "They saved her." The woman nodded, eyes damp. That night, Dana tucked Grace into bed. "Were you scared?" she asked softly. Grace shook her head, smiling. "No, I knew they'd come." Tears pricked Dana's eyes. For the first time, she realized her daughter no longer saw her as a victim. She saw her as a mother worth protecting and worth celebrating. In the following days, whispers shifted. At the cafe, one man muttered, "Outlaws," but another corrected him. Maybe angels, after all. The hardware clerk quietly fixed Dana's bill. The sheriff, once distant, tipped his hat as she passed. Change was slow, uneven, but it was there. At home, Dana found herself smiling more. Grace played on the porch while Harleys occasionally rumbled by, riders lifting a hand in quiet salute. One evening, Ironjaw stopped at her gate. "Town'll never love us, that's fine, but they'll never forget what they saw. And they'll never touch you again." Dana studied his weathered face. "Why me?" His gaze softened. "Because when you're alone, that's when you need family most. And family doesn't ask why, it just shows up." The engines outside hummed steady like a heartbeat. Dana exhaled, shoulders lighter than they'd felt in years. For the first time, she wasn't waiting for fear. She was learning to trust the sound of thunder. Weeks later, Dana returned to work to find flowers left by her register. Wild daisies in a glass jar. No note, just the quiet mark of someone who remembered. Customers spoke to her differently now, some shy, some apologetic. Even the pastor's wife offered a polite nod. Redwood Haven was changing. Not because the angels had roared through once, but because their loyalty had left an imprint. That night, Grace curled up on Dana's lap. "Mom," she whispered, "are we their family too?" Dana smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "I think we are, sweetheart." Outside, headlights flickered as a single Harley rolled past, slowing near their home before disappearing into the dark. Dana's chest swelled with gratitude. She had been cornered, mocked, left to fend for herself. But that night in the lot, 60 men had drawn a line in chrome and steel. And because of them, she and Grace now lived not in fear, but in quiet dignity. Summer came, bringing the Coastal Brotherhood Rally, a tradition where bikers rode the ocean highway in memory of fallen brothers. Ironjaw invited Dana and Grace. Nervous but curious, Dana agreed. The sight was breathtaking. Hundreds of bikes lining the cliffs, engines blending with the sea's roar. Ironjaw lifted Grace onto his tank for a photo, her laughter ringing through the salt air. Dana watched, heart swelling. For once, her daughter wasn't the child of a cashier struggling to make ends meet. She was a girl honored by giants. When the engines roared to life, Dana stood at the roadside, hair whipping in the wind, tears streaming. Grace waved wildly as Ironjaw's bike led the convoy, her small hand lifted high. Townsfolk had gathered too, their faces softening at the sight. Redwood Haven would never erase its prejudice overnight. But in that thunder, even the hardest hearts cracked, and in that moment Dana realized fear had never truly owned her. Silence had. On a quiet August evening, Dana sat on her porch, Grace asleep inside. The night was still, until engines rolled in softly, 50 bikes idling beneath the stars. Ironjaw approached, handing her a small patch. "Family first," it read. "We give this to those who stood alone and didn't break." Dana's throat tightened as she traced the stitching. "I'm not one of you," she whispered. Ironjaw's gaze held steady. "You are. You just didn't know it yet." The engines rumbled low, steady, protective. Dana slipped the patch into her pocket, tears spilling freely. For years, she'd been just another tired woman closing up a store, invisible in her struggle. But tonight she felt seen, lifted by loyalty she hadn't asked for but had been given anyway. She whispered to the night, "Thank you." The angels rolled out, thunder fading down the coast. Dana leaned back, heart steady. She wasn't walking alone anymore. She was walking with thunder at her back. Sometimes angels don't wear halos, they ride steel and roar like thunder. If Dana's story moved you, please subscribe, like, and tap the bell so more stories of courage, loyalty, and unexpected guardianship find their way to you.